Hi, everyone, and welcome. We're just going to give a couple minutes for people to join. Today, Kenny and I will be discussing the first in our product management tension series, and we'll get started shortly. As you enter, if you don't mind posting in the chat just where you're calling in from. I'd also love to, Kenny and I will love to hear from you to see, are there any topics around roles and responsibilities that you hope to see covered today? This gives us an ability to make sure that we, get to the topics that are most meaningful for you. How's my sound? It looks like my mic. Is my
You're
mic
fine.
connected? We're good? Okay,
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, we can hear you fine. Welcome, everybody. Good to see folks joining. As Rina mentioned, just put in your chat where you're dialing in from. Always good to see that.
Yeah, and if there are any roles and responsibilities, specific questions you might have, we love to get interaction in these webinars. All right.
Welcome, Malvika from India. It's evening to you. Kind of late, probably.
See, Jenny's here.
Welcome,
Awesome.
Jenny.
We're all over the world today.
We got some UK folks. We got a couple of UK folks. I like that.
Great. Well, the good news is that roles and responsibility challenges are ubiquitous. They are global. uh, actually, I'll actually mention that one as well, Ken. All right, let's get started. So welcome everyone as you join us. Please chime in the chat where you're calling in from as your other attendees are doing. And if you have any questions top of mind, we will also ask you for questions throughout. So today, Kenny and I will be discussing the first in our PM Tension series. We're going to be talking about roles and responsibilities. My name is Rina Alexin, for those of you who don't know me. I'm actually filling in for Tom Evans. And I'm located here in Austin, Texas. Kenny, why don't you give a brief intro?
Sure, I'm Kenny Kranseler. I've been a product side for almost 6 years now. Yeah. Oh, 7 years, 7 years. I've been a
Yeah.
product manager and I've been in product management for like 30 plus. So I've got lots of scars on my back and I'm dialing in today from California, but sometimes spend a lot of time up in Seattle, Washington. So I move around a bit.
A typical West Coaster over here. Move around between the good weather, right?
Exactly.
All right. So, for those of you who are joining us today, hopefully you know us at Productside, but for those of you who maybe are joining for the first time, we are an outcome-driven product partner. What that means is when we work with our clients, we're really one team with you. We're trying to get you to get to your goals. Our mission is to help product teams build products that people want to buy and ultimately use. And the reason why clients choose us is because we offer a complete solution for transformation across assessments, customized training programs, coaching, and advisory. We tailor all of our engagements to your context that makes it super relevant for your team and helps you and your team grow in your product management capability. And all of our engagements are run by one of our very invested experts like Kenny here. So please ask questions. If you have a burning question of, I am in this particular challenge, write it. If you want, you can use the chat, you can use the Q&A button. We will get to as many questions as possible live. In fact, Kenny, if your permission, if I see something relevant, I may stop you.
Jump right in.
Wonderful. And then I already saw Francisco, you asked our most commonly asked question, which is, can I watch this later? Will this session be available for download? And the answer is yes. All attendees, and even if you just are watching this after you registered, you will receive an email with the link to watch the recording after this webinar has ended. So all of that will be available to you. It'll be available on YouTube and also on our website. And please connect with us on LinkedIn. This is a growing community of product managers and leaders. There's a link pasted right now in the chat, and there's a QR code as well. The LinkedIn community has well over 60,000 members and counting, maybe 70,000 at this point. And it's a great place for you to share leadership best practices, discuss things with your peers, network. There are daily posts, I think, from various people working through product management challenges. So it's a pretty active community. Great. All right. So before I could get over to you, Kenny, and you can go over the agenda, I want to give just a little bit more context around why we're even having this PM Tension series. So at Productside, we asked well over 600 product managers and product leaders to share with us some of their frustrations and challenges at their, in their role. And we compiled those over 600 responses from the past just 2 years, and just wanted to take a look at, well, where are the biggest frustrations and challenges? And that is what this tension series is all about, is actually resolving those tensions. The number one tension was roles and responsibilities. And this was no surprise to Kenny or me or anybody else at Productside. Because whenever we run an analysis and we work with our clients, we find that roles and responsibilities, confusion around that tends to show up, I would say, like in 100% of our engagements. So it's very common. I'm actually going to read just really quick, just a couple examples from the study. Roles of a product owner versus product manager are confused. There is shifting and unclear job duties and expectations. Lines are still blurred between product manager, product owner, business analyst, many key product decisions driven by tech, and no clear responsibilities between those stakeholders as well. So this is very much common. In fact, when we took a look and we wanted to see, are there shifts in these challenges when we look at regional differences? There were not. So I'm glad to see people from India and the UK and other parts of the world join us today, because this truly is a global challenge of how to define what it is to be a product manager. And today we're going to be talking about some of the underlying tensions of roles and responsibilities. So with that, and I see in the chat, if you want to take a look at the product management top challenges that we found, there's actually a link right now in the chat to do so. Take it away, Kenny.
Thank you, Rina. Thank you, Rina. So as Rina mentioned, roles and responsibilities and product management and challenges between the two sort of go hand in hand. It's a common frustration, tension, source of contention around product management. And what I want to try to do is give you essentially a system, a way to break the problem down and try to find ways to act upon how do I get my role understood? How do I know I'm doing the right role? How do I make sure I'm doing the right things? So I sort of break this problem down into sort of what I call 5 actionable parts. The first one is, how do I get unstuck from accidental responsibility? Before I even start talking about roles, I'll talk about sort of the accidents that happen in product management. Then we'll talk about how you start to build a negotiation around your role, some of the expectations around your role. How do you get that understood by those who you're working with? Then the inevitable challenge of product management is, how do I apply influence without authority? I rarely see product management teams of hundreds of people, but I do see engineering and other teams with hundreds of people. So by the organization chart, you probably don't have a lot of authority, but you do have a lot of responsibility, and you need to apply that influence getting there. Part of the way to get there is using team agreements. So I'll talk a little bit about team agreements, and then we'll talk about how you map stakeholders. How do you figure out who are those stakeholders that I want to spend time with, and how do I talk, what's the right way to talk to stakeholders in that realm? So my hope is to create a system, a repeatable approach for how you define your role intentionally instead of reactively. And I just want to, as Rina mentioned before, let's acknowledge the truth. The job description of a product manager rarely reflects what you're doing. Across product management teams, I hear PMs report recurring attentions. Stakeholders unclear on who owns what. The product manager starts absorbing work because no one else stepped in, and responsibilities start to balloon and balloon over time. This webinar was shaped by some of the quotes that Rina mentioned, really around our discovery of these patterns. Point here is these aren't isolated issues. They're systematic, predictable challenges that product managers across industries and across geographies experience. So I want to do our first poll of the day. So we're gonna launch a little poll, and I want you to sort of chime in with what's your biggest source of role tension in your day-to-day work? Is it unclear ownership? Is it stakeholder overreach? Is it no authority and all blame? Is it constant role creep, or you're constantly cleaning up everybody else's messes?
I wish this was one of those like select all, but then I think,
No, I want people to say, what's the biggest one? What's the
yeah.
real problem, right?
Tom's with me here, but but this is actually a good one. Based on what I'm seeing here, a lot of this happens, and Kenny, this is just maybe my personal view, is when I talk to product managers, they tend to have this quality of having I'll call it like agency. Like I've heard this over the internet, like who has really good agency, but really it's people who have a true sense of ownership. And because of that, when there are these unclear roles and responsibilities, product managers step up. They repeatedly step up, and that can actually be damaging in a way to their career. And that's what we're discussing here today.
All right. We can share the results. I think we're probably, we've got most people have chimed in. It looks like I've got a third of the people who say I constantly clean up everybody else's messes. Oh, good. A little bit around unclear ownership. So if we put those two together, I think that's probably the
Yeah.
big challenge that people are running into. A little bit of stakeholder overreach, a little bit of authority. We'll talk a little bit about authority, and we will talk as part of our unclear ownership. Between unclear ownership and cleaning up everybody else's messes, that makes the constant role creep happen. So we'll hit all of these, I promise. So let's start with that one that people put first here was this. I constantly clean up everybody's messes, and I call it getting unstuck from accidental responsibilities. The folks here are not abnormal to what I see around most product managers. This is one of the biggest pain points. Product managers getting stuck doing work that they shouldn't open. How? They fill in gaps temporarily. They're helpful. It's the nature. It's what draws people to product management. There wasn't negotiation of how that landed up front. So let me try to provide a little bit on some tools that you can use to get unstuck, and unstuck in a way that you don't burn bridges behind you, because you don't want to do that either. So why do you get stuck? Well, as Rina mentioned, product managers tend to be action oriented. So when we see a hole or something not being done, we fill it. The problem is that filling, it starts to get accepted as common practice. The thumb that we put into the hole to plug the leak, well, it becomes permanent solution. And we become the go-to person to fill all the holes all the time, not just this once. And if we do that enough times, our job becomes just filling holes with no way of doing what a product manager is supposed to be doing. And every time a new hole opens up, we're the expected one to fill it until we run out of hands or fingers to fill those holes. So what should we do about this? Well, here's a simple or maybe not so simple process that I recommend. Start by identifying the misaligned ownership. What are those things that you're doing that you did that one time and now you're doing over and over and over, so you can't do that job that you're supposed to be doing effectively? Then make sure you articulate the impact of your carrying this work and start to ideate on who in the organization is best suited to carry out that work. Or maybe it's just not important enough that anyone should be doing it. Drop it down. Then the hard part, prepare that reset conversation. Who do you need to talk to? And what's the sustainable ownership model that you recommend? Remember, this is about trade-offs and outcomes. It's not about abdication. So figure out who you need to talk to. Start to build that role. Again, make sure you start to identify who could be the right person for it and start to build what's the right ownership model. And remember, some of that ownership model might be not doing it all. So a couple of example talking points that you might want to use in some of these reset discussions. I've been handling X, whatever that thing is you've been handling, and it's starting to limit my ability to deliver Y. So you're building the trade-offs. You're starting to lead into why am I having what's the cost of me cleaning up that mess for everybody all the time? Maybe go to someone and said, I'd just like to revisit ownership. Can we explore who's best positioned for long-term success here? Ask it in terms of questions, not necessarily laying out specifically what the answer is, but hopefully you're not the person who follows it long term. So just some ideas about how you get unstuck. All right, now that we've got that, now that you got some of those dike filling tasks off your plate, how do you start to set boundaries and expectations about what you actually should be doing? Well, you're likely going to have to do some negotiation around that with others in the organization. And remember, don't fear negotiation. It isn't about conflict. It's really more about clarity. Most PM discomfort I've seen comes from unspoken assumptions, not from the work itself. Um, but this is where our product managers, they often skip a critical step. Just slow down sometimes and explicitly define those expectations before you start flying around with tactics. Now, you as a product manager are likely going to have to be working across the organization. That's why we love our role. We get to work with everybody in the organization. But it also means we need to communicate our role and expectations across a wide swath of that organization. May look and seem intimidating, but it's crucial. And there are some patterns we do see over and over, right? We've talked about it before. Product managers owning responsibilities because someone had to. Undefined decision rights, particularly with adjacent roles. I'll talk about it a little bit with the product owner, the product marketing manager, user experience, program management. This is where you want to critically have those decisions and role expectations. Overlap that's never formalized or negotiated. None of these mean people are difficult. None of these mean that people are difficult. It's just simply structured ambiguity.
So Kenny,
Yeah.
I know we're going to go into like specific tactics of how to have these conversations, but just maybe a couple of thoughts. One is as a product manager, it feels like oftentimes bringing up these conversations could have political capital involved in that you might be seen as somebody who's not willing to do certain work. And is there a way or like a recommendation you have around how you frame it such that you're not seen as somebody who's just not willing to do that, go the extra mile?
Yeah. And part of that is have the discussion around this isn't about right or wrong or my responsibility or not, but who's the best person that can make these decisions? Who's the best person that has the information and the data and the contacts that allow us as an organization to best handle these? So it's not as if you're shirking responsibility. You're just trying to optimize for the environment that you're in, right? You want to build that understanding of who you are as a product manager, what you're really good at, where you really excel, and make sure that you're optimizing the resources of the organization to spend your time around that. And make sure that that role is understood across the organization. All those folks have a really good understanding of what a product manager role looks like, what you as a product manager bring to the organization, where the task boundaries are, and where some of the decision boundaries are as well. So
I feel like that framing, it's not about whether or not it's me doing the role, but it's just who should be doing the role. I'm doing
who's
it
the best
now, but is
person?
that the right decision? Yeah.
Who's the best person that can handle the tasks of that role? And there is some natural ambiguity on this. One of the most common misalignments that I see is between product managers and product owners. It's particularly troublesome when, for example, a product owner is in a technical or development organization, the product managers are in some other organization. You know, comment in the chat if you experience this issue. Um, It's really a great place to start that negotiation process if you run into this ambiguity. And as you'll notice on the slide here, there's some ambiguity built in. There is overlap. There's defined overlap. There are things that overlap between those two. But you might want to try to have that discussion, with the product owner or the group of product owners or whoever's head of product owners at this point, that you as a product manager are focused on discovery. It means you don't help with the delivery, but your key focus and your key alignment is around discovery. And the product owner really is focused on delivery. So there are some things that just become tasks that either one handles, right? Things like, you know, business realization and competitive analysis and forecasting and end of life and customer outreach sit within that discovery realm. On the other side, some of the core tactics about getting something done, getting it out the door around, what's my backlog looks like, how do I track specific releases, clearly on the product owner side. And the key negotiation is the stuff in the middle. And I'm not going to say that there's one definition because it's basic, as a lot of it's organizational dependent and a lot of it's individual skills dependent on who's going to handle what's in this overlap place here. Things like the vision and the roadmap and release planning, who owns personas. Have that discussion about who's the right person to own it. And it might be that there's shared ownership, but who has the ultimate decision-making responsibility around some of these things? Who's the person that's going to have that? If you have that discussion with whoever you're working with from a product owner side, you're gonna feel a lot better. And again, part of it is what are your skills, part of it is what are the organizational expectations are, and it might be different. It might be you're working with three different product owners on three different products. That discussion might be different across those because what the skills of the product owner may vary.
So Kenny, we're getting a couple, chats here about what happens if both of these roles are yours, right? And in some organizations that very well exist, where the product manager is also the product owner, and there's no actual product owner.
Yeah, and that does happen a lot. And one of the things I will tell you, thank you, because you led right into my next slide. I love good questions that lead into my next slide. Um, you're going to have to do all of these, but what happens is time and again when folks have both a product manager and a product owner role and develop, packaged up into one, and I've lived in that role, so I'll talk a little bit about that as well. Understand, think about your responsibilities and understand the urgency and the importance of the tasks you're working on. While those things in the bottom right here, those things that are both important and urgent are a must do, and usually with some level of immediacy. A lot of us are spending way too much time on things that are in the bottom right here. Those things that are very urgent but may or may not be very important. Those tactical and administrative tasks that some loud and squeaky wheel is complaining about. And particularly those folks in which you're both a product manager and product owner at one, those things on the right side of that slide tend to fall in that category. So yeah, you have to do those things, but don't spend all your time over there because what happens is if you're spending all your time on those things that are way urgent but not important, you're not doing those things you're spending too little time on those key strategic opportunities that enable you to differentiate your product in the marketplace. What's happening in the market? What's happening in the competition? What are the needs of my customers? What are their pain points and how are they being addressed? That needs to feed into those tactics on the right.
Kenny, this is really easy to say, but hard to do,
It
right?
is.
So let's actually maybe think more tactically. If you end up spending too much time the responsive, not strategic, and you want to shift more time over to the strategic, what are some things that you might need to let go of, or different, let me say, like different thought patterns? Like, for example, everything feels urgent, but not everything is 100% as urgent as it feels. So
Right, exactly.
one way.
Get that sense that two things that can happen, right? One is it's really urgent. We think it's really urgent. Are you the right person to handle it? Right? Maybe there's someone else in the organization that you can find that it can do some of those things. Right? Yes, I'll certainly assist and bring in Johnny to help solve this urgent task. Goes back to the thing I talked about at the beginning of if you're cleaning up those messes that first time, they think you're going to clean up the mess every time. So push back those one or two times where something's really urgent and you might not be the best person to do it, but no one else is doing it. Go find someone, talk to them, and say, "Hey, Johnny, we got this problem that's really urgent. Can you handle this one time rather than me handling it every time?" That's one way to do it. The other thing is reserve time and use calendar management. Reserve time on your calendar to do some of those things. I mean, I've seen it happen. There are some cultures and organizations where the work gets done by calendars, right? And you just invite you to every meeting and throw things on your calendar. Block time in your calendar for those things on the upper left over here. Make sure you schedule that time in advance, plan for it, and make sure that it happens. It's a good way to start doing some of those things, some of the tactics you can do around.
That's exactly where I was going to go. Now, it depends on, if you're working with distributed teams, whether or not you can actually predict your morning. But my recommendation usually is for the strategic work. It also depends on what kind of thinker you are, but many of us get the strategic work done really well earlier in the morning hours and then very late at night. So
Yeah.
try to block time if you can in the morning and then leave your afternoon to take care of everything that's in the bottom right.
Yes. And sometimes they think things collect during the day in the bottom right as well. So they're almost better handled later in the day and those kind of things. So great point, Rena. A good way to think about it. So as we're thinking about that negotiation around boundaries and those kind of things, as you think about negotiating your role, what I'm trying to create for you all is think about a framework that helps shift ownership conversations from being very emotional to being more objective. First, define that work. Define those things that need to get done to move to move your product forward, right? Who needs to do what needs to be done and who should be the right person to do it? Who has the right skills? Who has the right information? Who has the right data? Who has the right authority and contacts that enable them to get what a specific task done? Start to think about those. Figure out who are those stakeholders, that broad chart we showed before. Who are the stakeholders that are impacted by moving or assigning or reassigning each of these tasks? Each of you probably have that internal Rolodex of those folks that you need to align with. Identify, figure out who those are, who do you have those. Start to surface some assumptions that are being made in that role in the definitions. Get a clear understanding of what assumptions those stakeholders have, what assumptions the organization has about some of those tasks that need to be laid out, right? Then have that alignment conversation. Discuss openly with those stakeholders you identify some of the trade-offs and the outcome impacts and how to best align around specific assignments. And then document the decisions. Don't have too much process around this, but make sure that between you and the folks you're talking to, there's a good understanding of the decisions that you made, the expectations around who and how the work will be done.
Kenny, what kind of meetings or cake? I suppose I'm trying to ask, like, where do you insert these conversations? What kinds of meetings could you have with people? Because as always, getting unstuck requires effort, and then it feels like you're just piling on more work.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it is you set up specific times with the folks that you need to have, right? Who are the key folks across the different departments that you work with, and just have an open discussion with them. Yeah, if you're in the same place, take them to lunch or take them to coffee, and just have a discussion about, hey, here's how I view my role, and here's what that means from your perspective. Here's what you can expect from me, and here's what I expect from you. Start to build those, have those discussions. And yeah, I'm not trying to throw a bunch more meetings that you have. This isn't something that needs to be done weekly or monthly. Have that discussion, document it a little bit, respond with an email that says, here's what we came up with in terms of how I serve you and how we work together and where we blend some of those things. And then
So
say that.
yeah, so I like that you put this in a circle because this is one of those things that it should be done continuously. If you're in this webinar and you're like, okay, this sounds like a whole lot of work. I almost view it like tech debt. Like there's role debt in your organization from not having these kinds of discussions, such that putting in this time actually on a continuous basis actually helps over time, such that you don't feel overwhelmed by a lot of tasks. And ideally, the goal here is that your schedule does clear up from some of these tasks such that you're able to focus on the more strategic items. That's really what you're trying to accomplish, is actually move the company forward. It helps to also think about that benefit when you're going through this work, because this is a lot of work too.
It might be a little short-term pain for long-term gain, right? And don't be afraid of it, right? So um, when this happens, I have a lot of product managers who often ask, but how do I actually say this? A couple of examples, right? Just some ways you can have some of these discussions, right? Here's what I believe success looks like. What do you think? So lay out a model that you have, how the role should be, how your role is, and how you serve them. Get their input on it, right? What parts of this work are closest to your team's expertise, right? I really value your team. I love what you do. What are we doing together? What am I doing that really is your team's great at? And where might shared ownership create problems? If we share, because a lot of times I've seen some of these discussions like, oh, well, we'll just share this. Well, here are some problems that'll create. Have that discussion with folks, and start to say these are low friction openings that these hopefully are low friction openings that can start to keep that conversation collaborative. So I want to share a story. And it goes back to what people had said. I went to work for a startup. There were like 10 or 15, there were 20 people at the company that had been running for about 3 or 4 years. That was the first product person they hired. That meant I was both product manager and product owner, right? And there was a lot of work to be done. There was some tech debt we had, but at the same time, we were um, reaching upon new opportunities that needed some strategic understanding. Which market segments were we going for? How are we going to create value for those market segments? There were some incredible competition at that time that was burgeoning. We needed to make some of those big decisions at that time, before we could figure out what's the right thing to build and how do we build it. Um, but I was being told to spend, we have release X coming out. Please get release X out there. Kenny, that's why we brought you in here for. And I was like, no, we need to make some of these big decisions about who are our customers and what do they need and what are the products that we build as a result of those and how do we align the products. So I had a very frank conversation with the person who was head of engineering at the time. And I was like, you've built a fabulous platform for us to do incredible things. And I'm going to leverage that platform in building great things for our customers and the company at large. What I need you to do is to help me work through managing the backlog, managing what specific tasks need to be done. I'll tell you at a high level some of those strategic decisions we have to make, but please commit to me. And I almost sort of hired the director of engineering or the VP of engineering as my product owner. And because we had that discussion, because he understood or his team understood some of the things that needed to be done to clean things up from a architectural perspective, we built this really great alignment and a great arrangement between the two where those things that typically could have been a product owner, he was able to handle as the head engineering. And that continued, even when company grew, I grew, we started to hire some product owners. I continued to have that discussion with that head of engineering because it evolved. We grew, the platform grew, some of the opportunities came through, and we started to pull some of those things back into my organization. He was fine with it at that point. But because I was able to offset some of those things early on, we were able to make some great decisions about how to move the company forward, where to make investments from a high level standpoint that drove how the platform built over time, but I needed them to step up. And that wouldn't have happened until I had that heart-to-heart discussion with my head of engineering and got his commitment to take some of those things that, typically were part of my role, right? From a from a CEO perspective.
So Kenny, I have a question here from Kyle.
Yeah, thanks,
What
Kyle.
what would have happened, right, if that first heart to heart didn't pan out? It didn't work, and that head of engineering was not going to step up the way that you needed him to. So do you have any tactical, like other tactical pieces of advice of how you can get senior leaders maybe on board and increase your influence in the org?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is framing it in that trade-off standpoint. If I do these things, if I'm going to go manage, all the decisions that are made on a day-to-day tactical basis, here's the risk. Here's the risk we run into, and make sure that it's pitched in that realm, and say, go back and say, you hired me to make sure that we made the right decisions from a business and customer perspective. I can do all these things. I'm really good at, managing backlogs and writing user stories and those kinds of things because I've done them before. But if I'm spending my time doing those, it means I'm not figuring out where we need to go from a business perspective. I can't track exactly what competitor X is doing. I can't understand how the market is evolving. I can't understand the needs of this market segment that has a huge opportunity if we build the right product for it. That's where do you want me, go back and say, where would you want me spending my time? Do you want me spending it managing user stories, or do you want my time spent managing how we invest in our business and build it and grow it for a long-term perspective? Fortunately, the head of engineering at this company, Enric, understood that implicitly, so I didn't have to make that trade-off. But sometimes we have to we have to explicitly drive that trade-off for the folks we're working with.
So what I'm hearing from you, Kenny, is that you need to articulate in the trade-offs that people might not be really understanding the cost of the decision of having you work on that kind of work.
Yeah.
I talk about it making product work visible. A lot of people don't understand what it even needs to get done in a competitive analysis. And a lot of these strategic items, because they don't feel urgent, even though they are important, they feel like the obvious thing that you can kick down the road. But again, that's another way of creating debt in your organization. And that debt really is you're not able to make really good decisions on the long term. So to Kyle, in some cases, I'll also be honest, there are organizations where all they want you to do is the low level work. Like they feel like they don't really feel that there is a cost that they're paying. And in those organizations, the only way to get out of that is to find people who really understand the value of product work, right? You have to get the common understanding of like, what is your job supposed to be? And if there isn't that at the highest level, then either there needs to be somebody in the organization that can have that conversation, or in the cases that we're often brought in, we try to be an advocate on behalf of product in those organizations. And oftentimes we do get success because we can show proof points of here are good teams that work in this way, and here's the benefits to the business, because that's really what we're trying to accomplish is business outcomes.
Yeah. And if you're in such an organization, you may have a decision to make, right? Do I want to live this way and continue to operate, or find a way to break out of it in some way, shape, or form?
Yeah. I do want to chime in really quick here, only in that these kinds of conversations, I want to encourage everybody here to not discourage that, like, okay, this is all hard, but it's so vitally important to have, especially right now, because when I talk to product leaders and when we talk to product leaders, with AI, there's a couple, I don't know if I want to call them risks, but trends that I'm hearing. And that is, I think we've talked about it before as like the great compression of roles. There's a question right now of, okay, well, with AI and leveraging AI capabilities, can product managers do design and engineering work, or can designers do product work, or engineers do product work, right? So there's a lot of these questions that I think the risk of those questions is that they tend to blur lines even more. And so having a really strong discussion now before those lines are too blurred to see them at all, I think will pay dividends.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Particularly, hey, designers could do all the strategic stuff up front. Well, they can just go ask ChatGPT to go build a strategic map of our business opportunities.
That's
Yeah, that's one
scary
way
how
to
that
do it.
happens.
It is scary. It does happen. But you need articulate where the value is and where some of the insights you may have. Your best buddy in ChatGPT or Copilot or Gemini doesn't necessarily have that understanding of the background. All right, let's go to the next topic. Assume you've defined your role quite well. A key part of your role as a product manager is that you will tend to have a lot of responsibility, a lot of ownership to get things done without a lot of organizational authority. As I said, you don't have large teams that report to you, or from an organizational perspective, have to listen to you. So how do you have the right level of influence around the decisions of the organization without the authority to make everyone listen to you? And at its core, understand that your role as a product manager is built on influence, not command. You tend to be accountable for outcomes that require collaboration from a lot of folks who don't necessarily report to you. In some of our discussions and some of the feedback we've got from product managers, influence has surfaced repeatedly as the foundation for a lot of the other skills that we talk about product managers needing. And even when roles are ambiguous, regardless of how much work you did as a product manager, influence is sort of the glue that keeps things moving. And yes, that sometimes means that as product managers, we have to get into a little bit of politics, understanding the political situations at our organization, and using our influence to make sure that things get done if need be. So don't be afraid of it, right? In my experience, it has working doing this for a long time. Some of your influence typically stems from several sources. One is diplomacy. So when communicating with others, make sure you have the right tone, the right timing, the right framing, and yeah, use some empathy to understand where those you're working with are coming from and what their needs are. It's going to require a lot of what I call active listening. So have those discussions, really understand where they are. And you're going to have a little bit of political awareness. What are the motivations that are going on in the organization? Why is someone in the organization viewing things in a certain way? Are there specific coalitions or alliances around some of those things? Understand those. And as you're trying to have influence, as you're trying to make decisions done, make sure you've been understanding some of those. You can leverage those. You can take advantage of that fact. If there are certain alliances or certain coalitions that are going on in the organization, make sure that's happening. And a little bit of clarity. When you're asking for things, when you're communicating things, when you're driving to decisions and tasks and activities, make sure that people know what the path looks like. What's in it for them is an important thing. And what do they have to do that's in it for them? Understand that. Understand people are at the core, they have personal goals and objectives. Part of you want to understand those and how you can align some of those things you do from a influence perspective around individuals' motivations. So a couple of tactics that I've seen start to work pretty well. It turns out some of the simplest tactics here are some of the most powerful. Identify shared wins early, where things that you want to have happen align with the objectives of the folks you're working with. Those are the easy wins. It also means if you're going to present something in a larger meeting, you need to build your own coalition going into that meeting. So you may have to do some pre-alignment with some of the stakeholders before some of those big meetings. Data is your friend here, but don't over rely on reams of data. Make sure that the data you present and how you pull it together is in digestible and decision ready formats. And include the costs of inaction and decision delaying tactics as part of that. There are those organizations that just love to throw those in and keep kicking it down the line to make a decision. Make sure you lay that out and what the cost of inaction between now and then are. Essentially, what you're trying to do here is you're making decisions easy for others. Think of ways that you can make others look good from making a decision. Reduce their investment, their emotional capital, their challenges from doing it, right? How do I remove the friction from folks making decisions? So think about that. So just some simple tactics, simple topics on even though you don't have authority over folks, how do you start to have influence with them? Understand their motivations, understand the politics, bring data in as your friend, but make that data point to specific actions and decisions that need to be made. All right, let's talk a little bit about team working agreements. It's oftentimes the starting point for teams that work closely together of not only who owns what, but how the team thinks about figuring out who owns what, even if we don't know what that what is yet, which tends to happen a lot. So another poll, what agreements do you have between you and your key teams that are working together? Let's see where folks come out on that.
All right. And then Kenny, while we do this, a quick time check.
Yeah, we've got about 15 minutes. Yep.
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 Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. All right. So I think we're getting a good number of responses. It's actually quite, even on the top two.
We can
Um,
share it. Yeah. It's what I
awesome.
figured.
All right. So basically, the top two is I have a couple of responsibility definitions with key team members. Awesome. And then the other one is just a bit of chaos. Not sure who's supposed to do what. Yep, that exists quite frequently.
So yeah, it does not surprise me that that's the case, that people are going to be in the bottom two categories here. So what does it mean, right? So think of team agreements. They're sort of a shared rules of engagement, things like decision right, communication norms, collaboration expectations. And they're not just frameworks, these are living documents. But they are a hugely and powerful tool for addressing role ambiguity without heavy process, right? So these team agreements should include a couple of things. One is the roles and responsibilities we talked about, at least what we know at the current time. It might change, and our team agreement might need to be updated to cover changes in those. Decision-making principles. How do we make decisions, right? And respect individual ownership of those decisions, which ones people can make themselves, which ones other people need to put out there. What are some of the norms around communication? While someone might have decision authority, they still need to communicate that decision to others on the team. How do we do that? What's the expectations around cadence? How often we communicate, how often we come together, and if there is conflict, how we resolve that conflict. Conflicts are inevitable. We shouldn't be afraid of those, but let's make sure that it doesn't denigrate into a free-for-all or finger pointing. We have to deal with that inevitable conflict. So the goal is to make implicit expectations explicit. Here's an example of a team agreement template. I'm not going to go through it in detail, but hopefully the structure, and we can share out this template, hopefully, gives you some repeatable format that you can use. You know, who does what? What are the roles? Who are the people? What roles do they form? Just some norms around collaboration, around how we make decisions, around how we resolve conflicts. And good to have, and this is a great place to have some discussions around what are our tenets as a team? What is important to us? What's accountability look like around those? And then, you know, what are some things around how we review this? Where is our review? Where do we put things? Where do we place things for review? How does it get reviewed? And how do we update this agreement on a continual basis? So just some good ideas around that. I think this is a great way, especially we talked earlier about how do I have that role definition up front. This is a great place to start it. Have this alignment with some of the teams that you're working on.
Yeah, we'll make sure to include a template for a team agreement. It sounds like this one's going to be pretty useful. I also find this is a good one if you're truly having those conflicts with some of your stakeholders this is another way to have that conversation, but have it be in the pursuit of a common goal, right? That you're all trying to work well
Right.
together.
Yeah. How do we fill out this template? How do we agree
Yeah.
on that? And what are the agreement of folks? So have them individually come together. Then you, as a group, you can start to decide on some of those. Great place to start, and it makes the rest of your role definitions a lot easier to have. Okay. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about stakeholders and the prioritization of stakeholders. You only have so much time in a day, and you need to prioritize who and how you communicate with stakeholders, both internally and externally. So first, a bit of definition. What's a stakeholder? Stakeholders have a vested interest in the product and are directly impacted by its success or failure, right? Again, play a crucial role in both driving the product's direction and success. But a lot of these folks have responsibilities beyond those of a product manager, right? Some of them are high up in your organization. As I said, you don't have the time or resources to spend equal time with all your stakeholders. So look across sort of two axes to decide on where you spend your time. One is this axis of interest, basically how much impact your product has on them. That can be low or high. And the second one is power, low or high. How much influence do they have on the direction of your product? If you've got someone who's both high interest and high power, they fall into that sort of actively engaged. Keep a close tie on them, right? There are some folks who have a high interest. The product has a huge impact on them. They don't really have a lot of power over the direction of it. You got to keep these folks informed. Sort of externally communicating to some of those folks. The ones in the upper left, these folks have not a lot of interest, not a lot of impact on what the product does for them, but they have a lot of power on influencing those. Keep these understand uh, keep from them to you communications flowing because you want to keep them satisfied. And in the last group, you might think to ignore these folks. They don't have a lot of power. It doesn't have a lot of impact them. Monitor them because it can change over time. So keep an eye on some of those folks. And for all stakeholders, but particularly those in the keep informed in the monitor stage, the bottom one, establish sort of a monthly communication that covers things like market discoveries, key decisions you've made, progress you've made on the roadmap. Maybe establish a wiki or a Confluence site to leverage some of those. For those actively engaged folks, build that core team. Might be the product manager, product marketing manager, program manager, product owner, user experience lead, development lead, maybe the QA lead. You're going to meet on a regular cadence covering the key topics, but also spending time on things like product strategy review, blockers to resolve, and future planning. And during key phases, you may need to meet weekly or bi-weekly. Those keep satisfied folks in the upper left, you want to have sort of that extended product team that includes the core team, but also includes, business unit partners, finance, marketing, customer support, maybe things like security and regulatory that need to be engaged at the right moments, but aren't necessarily part of the core team. Might have a monthly meeting with some of those folks, except during, maybe during key phases, right? Involve sales enablement in that area as well. So you're going to have multiple sets of teams out there. All right. So a lot covered in 53 minutes. It comes down to really one idea: define your role intentionally, not reactively. And a lot of the tools we covered around negotiating boundaries, influence effectively, and create clarity through agreements and mapping. A lot of ideas and concepts and tactics we had around negotiate early, influence strategically. If it's misaligned, find opportunities to reset it, use team agreements, and map your engagements and those key stakeholders you have. Try to pick one tactic to try this week. It might not be the perfect moment to do it, but an opportunity to move forward with that. So a lot going on there.
Great. I'll actually add another tactic that you can employ. Maybe if you're a product manager, no, go to the next slide.
Go next slide. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. If you're a product manager at your next one, if you're feeling like there is some role confusion, then make sure to download this. It's a helpful infographic. Bring it to your one-on-one and say, hey, I saw that roles and responsibilities is one of the top challenges. I'm feeling it too. Can we talk about it? That way you can bring some external data and proof points to your conversations. Just a couple quick announcements, and then we're going to get to Q&A. We have a couple questions. So we have our optimal product management class that teaches a lot about stakeholders and foundational core skills of product management. Our next in-person event is actually going to be in London. I saw there are a couple of people from the UK joining. Take a look and share with your colleagues if any of them might be interested in joining us this spring. Next, upcoming webinars are all about these tensions in product management. The next one is happening later this month, and it's about, I love this title, Why Smart Teams Sometimes Build Stupid Things. So register for that as a part 2. I believe that one is going to be more around process, maybe process or customer understanding. Those were the other 2. Finally, just in case you're interested, we have a number of virtual classes available. So this is also a QR code. So all of these classes come with certification. There's optimal product management and our AI product management class that includes agentic AI. So those are our upcoming courses. So now we're going to stop sharing screen and we're going to go into Q&A. And this first one comes from somebody that joined us today. They're anonymous. They are the first true product person in a mature startup. They've been with the org for a while. They're leading product, and they're at a growth inflection point. The founders disrupt and lob grenades after huge amounts of effort getting close to alignment prioritization. Ouch, that hurts. Once you're close, they blow it up again. So how do you manage up to the CEO and co-founders that you are actually working in the org's best interest? This one is so hard. Kenny, what do you got?
A lot of it's going to take a little bit of personal confidence and boldness to do this. Have a one-on-one with the CEO, right? Talk to him and say, and I'd almost say I want to talk to you about what your vision for the company is. So have it from a more questioning perspective. It's not whining. You're not saying, I wish these things didn't happen. I wish. No, it's like, what do we want to get done in this organization? What does success looks like for this startup? Once he articulates those, you suddenly have a lot of ammunition to come back at him and say, here are the problems we have right now, right? And inevitably that one where he's blowing things up is going to get in the way of enabling success for the business long term.
Yeah, so I would say, and having some personal experience with CEOs and also co-founders.
I've done that once or twice, Rina.
Co-founders and CEOs, I think, tend to have a lot of context. So they tend to also be in a way like the chief product officer because they have access to the board, the key customers. They might have access and context that you don't have. And so one of the things that I think might be helpful is actually coming to that CEO or co-founder and expressing, hey, like, it sounds like you have a lot of conversations. I'm not privy to them. I'm not really sure how these decisions are getting made. And I really want to be part of that so that I can help support your ultimate goals. So again, it's more that shifting into help me help you and help me stop wasting my time because I'm clearly going in directions that are not that important and spending a lot of time. And we could probably do better by you and me being aligned before we start doing all of this other work. So tough.
Yeah,
but
some of us have been there. It's hard, right? I worked in another startup where the CEO didn't know where he wanted to go. He just kept coming up with ideas, right? A little bit of what I did there was, okay, my job now is to serve the CEO. And I had to make a decision at that point. And it was that point that we talked about earlier, right? Is this a place I want to be long term?
So exactly. So the co-founders sometimes don't realize that they're lobbing grenades and they are. So making that visible to them is really important. I want to make sure we get to one more question. This is going to be our last one, but this is similar. So it's how do I negotiate with someone senior to me? You're feeling like that. Oh, can I even talk to them?
Come to an understanding. I mean, one of the things you should view as a product manager, you are senior and you should view yourself as senior. So take your boldness and take your you you're important to the organization. Don't be afraid to get on that person's calendar. And again, it's not about telling them what to do or whining to them or saying here are things that are broken, but hey, I really want to understand your perspective here. It's really important to me. It'll help me do my job better if I understand what you're trying to do. Buy them a coffee, take them to lunch. It's worth it. But do it from a perspective of, hey, I'm trying to learn, and you have a lot of knowledge in about this organization that I would love to understand better. People love to have those kinds of discussions. So if you pitch it that way, you can do a lot in terms of having some of those skip one-to-ones or those kinds of things that can really improve your visibility in the organization, improve your understanding of, and I talked about what are the politics that are going on in that organization and how can I best respond to some of those.
Exactly right, Kenny. And at the end, everyone here, remember, we are all people. Forget titles sometimes. The titles are not that important. It's more about the relationships that you build. And I love some of the framing that Kenny offered today, as well as the tactics. Just remember to not only come to these senior people with problems, also come to them championing things that have gone well, such that you actually build relationships versus just come to them with, issues and tensions. With that, we are wrapping up our first in our PM Tension series. Again, the next one is happening later this month. Thank you to all who are participating. I saw hearts in the chat. I saw people resonating. Know it also that you are not alone. This is common. This is our most common issue and challenge, but it can be resolved. It does take some work, but this is something that you can do to over the long term make it easier for yourself and pays dividends for the organization. Thank you so much, Kenny. That was
Thank you,
awesome.
man. All right, have a great day. Enjoy, everybody.